What's up, everybody? Tonysaurus Rex here. I wanted to let you know that this week's episode is a little bit different. Sunday night, I was a special guest on Mike Woodard's podcast, Talk of Horror, and I am using that podcast to help promote his podcast. I'm also using it as the replacement for this week's episode. If you guys didn't already know, I did record an interview with Natasha from Fangoria on Monday morning, but I had some audio issues with some major discrepancies when I was trying to edit the file, so we are re-recording the episode on Friday, and this episode is going to kind of replace and make up for the episode that we will not have on Wednesday for Fangoria. That episode will be uploaded next week. So, this is Talk of Horror meets Everything But the Podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mike, and I have a special guest tonight on the episode of the Talk of Horror. Tonight, the Talk of Horror is meeting Everything But the Podcast, and if you're not familiar with that podcast, Tonysaurus Rex, he is behind that. He's a cool dude, a new friend, and tonight we're just going to be talking about a lot of things horror. We're going to try to keep it around 20-30 minutes. Tony, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, man. This is my first time being like a guest on someone else's podcast, so I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous before we got started, but I'm excited to talk about horror.
Hey, man, I'm happy to have you here, and I'm even more happy and honored that, you are on my podcast for the first time being a guest. I think that's awesome. So, you and I both, from when we talked, we're both Halloween fans. What do you think about the new news that's dropped about Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends? Are you happy about that?
Actually, I am. I'm super excited because I watched the one that they just did, the one where Jamie Lee Curtis came back.
Right.
When I first found out that Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back, I was like, okay, I'm all in. Like, you've already told me, you don't have to say anything else.
Yeah, man.
Just count me in.
I was happy. There's a lot of mixed emotions on Halloween 2018. I liked it. There was some things that I think were a little bit crazy that they could have, done without. But now that they're doing 2 more movies, it makes me feel a little bit better because I think they can right some of those wrongs and, make it, I hope they finally bring an end to the Laurie Strode storyline because as much as I love Jamie Lee Curtis and everything, I mean, it's time to put that story to bed and I hope they move on to new options for Michael Myers after this is over. But I know you and I both are big the original Halloween 1978, and then we got Halloween 2 from 1981.
That's my favorite.
Right. I know we're both big fans of that. Which do you prefer, the original or the 1981 sequel, Halloween 2?
I actually prefer the sequel. A lot of people get mad at me for that because they're like, oh, that's not the original. Yeah. But I actually do prefer the sequel because I like the hospital scenes.
I do too.
Like, I like that they're in a hospital and there's not a lot of people there, and his kills in that are like just, they're genius freaking kills. That's literally my favorite in the whole series, basically.
Oh,
and I love how they did it. Wasn't even like it was just a spin-off. Like, it literally tied directly into the first one, so it was just a continuation.
Yeah, you can watch both of those movies back to back, and it feels like one long movie because they pick it up right where the original ends. Don't get me wrong. I think Nick Castle was the better Michael Myers, but something about Halloween 2 and like you said, the hospital scenes and stuff like that, something about that just, I don't know, it intrigued me as a kid, for lack of a better term. I've been in the hospital, with surgeries and stuff like that, and I know that the last time I had neck surgery, I was sitting in the hospital and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if Michael Myers just walked in the door? I mean, obviously not to kill me, but, I just couldn't help but think of that hospital scene. And so I'm really a big fan of that. Another thing that I'm super excited about, I don't know about you, but I am a huge Creepshow fan. And the fact that Shudder is bringing a Creepshow television series, strictly, exclusively to Shudder, I'm excited about that. Have you ever watched Creepshow? Are you a Creepshow fan?
I have seen Creepshow. I don't have a lot of memories of it, but I did see they're doing the new show, and it was enough to get me excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited for anything new coming out, but whenever they take back, because I'm a fan of a lot of the 70s and the 80s horror films, like that was just my time frame for stuff. So whenever I see something being brought back from that time or recreated in a different angle or however they want to do it, I usually get excited.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I can't wait. I suggest for you, man, if you get a chance, go back and revisit Creepshow. I was a huge George Romero fan. I was fortunate enough to get to meet him and stuff shortly before he passed. I actually shared a picture of it on Twitter. I've really been blessed with that, and he was such a nice guy. And, he directed Creepshow. Of course, you had Stephen King in there, writing the stories, and he actually was an actor in one of the little stories in the movie. The name eludes me. His name was Geordie, The Lonesome Death of Geordie something. I don't remember his last name. I apologize. But if you get a chance to check that out, I definitely would recommend going back and revisiting it. It's a great movie. My favorite little story from there is Father's Day. I could go on for an hour talking about that, but I'm not going to because we're on time. What's some of the things you're looking forward to? What's some new horror movies that you know about that are coming out this year, next year, whatever? Which one are you most excited about? I know we've got It Chapter 2. We've got a sequel to The Shining, which is called Doctor Sleep.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, man. I don't know much about it. I need to do a little bit more research, but I do know that it's coming out. I'm not sure if it's this year or next year, but I think that'll be pretty cool. I think there's actually a trailer for it, so it's probably going to drop this year. So what are your thoughts on like It Chapter 2?
I did see the remake. I didn't like it as much as the original. I was a huge Tim Curry as Pennywise is just my preferred Pennywise,
right?
Just because of how outrageous it was. But I still liked it. It wasn't. I think they went more for the horror angle, and I was more used to that comedy angle from the original because I liked that blend,
right?
Which is why I'm a huge fan of like Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that because I like comedy that's added into it.
Yeah,
but yeah. I think it'll still be good.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be good. I'm like you, the difference between the original It and, the newer ones we've got is you got to remember the original It was a TV series, and so it was on television, so they couldn't really do the gore and the carnage candy and stuff like they do in the movies. So I agree with you. Tim Curry will always be Pennywise to me. But with this new reincarnation that they have and the gore and stuff, I enjoy it. But I always will be a purist as far as going back to Tim Curry and what he did with that character. And, you got to give props to him because with that being on television and the blood and guts and stuff being, they weren't able to do what they can in the movies, so that put more pressure on him as an actor to deliver fear without all the extra, carnage candy. So you got to tip your hat to that guy because he made that, in my opinion.
Exactly. I will say one advantage that the new movie has is it's not as long and it sits through the original.
Yeah.
Because it was a series, trying to watch that whole thing is just, some of those movies, as good as they were, the length always gets to me nowadays because I just don't have the time to sit and watch an 8-hour program.
Right. Man.
Even if it's something I love, I'm just like, man, I don't have 8 hours. I got work. I got other stuff I got to do.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. Some of these movies, especially in the superhero, like Marvel and DC,
exactly.
Man, I don't know how anybody, and even Star Wars to a certain degree, if it's over 2 hours, I don't care how great the movie is, it's hard to keep somebody's attention when you're sitting that long. And that's why it's so important with like these new Halloween movies that are coming out. They've got to make sure that they nail everything and that they tell a good story because you don't want to lose your audience, especially when you're filming back to back and you've got another movie, coming after it a year later. They're going to have to really pull out some some stuff that we're not expecting, at least in Halloween Kills, which is the next one, that they're releasing, because you've got to keep people's attention, and they have to end it, on a note where people are going to want to come back and watch that final one, Halloween Ends. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they got to find one. I think they have a lot of problem with that nowadays with films, is keeping in the next one.
Yeah.
I heard, they take the monsters. I haven't seen it yet. I saw the Godzilla, the other one, the first one, like a few years out. When did it come out? 2013?
Yeah, I think it was 13 or 14, somewhere around in there, yeah.
The monsters that did not live up to the first one.
Yeah.
The other one next year of Kong vs. Godzilla, which could be a huge thing for any monster movie fans. But now people are kind of like, well, I don't know if it's going to work out, because I lost my interest in the second one.
Right.
So I think that's kind of something that they struggle with, interest.
Yeah. Your phone's kind of cutting out a little bit, brother. So just wanted to let you know that I'm still able to hear you, but it's cutting out just a little bit. So, there you go. I think we got you back. So.
Yeah, it was probably from me walking around.
Yeah. No, that's fine, man.
I just took a seat. It might help.
I'm the same way, man. It's hard to sit still. That goes back to what we were just talking to about trying to sit still through a 2.5, 3 hour movie. It's damn near impossible. So, but, yeah. And, we were talking earlier about, Fangoria and stuff like that, and all the old days. And, at my age, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'll be 43 in a couple of weeks. And I remember going and picking up the old Fangoria magazines and stuff. And I kind of miss that nowadays. What are your thoughts on that?
I do like that when it comes to Fangoria, that they're still doing they're only doing the physical magazines. Like, I literally just subscribed to them for the first time a few weeks ago. I've known about them for years. It's something that always just kind of eluded me. I didn't get that stuff as a kid. Like, my parents just kind of shooed it all away from me. I didn't get comic books or video games or stuff like that. So this was kind of like I'm doing this. Like, it's my turn.
Yeah,
I'm doing
absolutely.
it. I'm getting something I like. And when I saw that it was the physical only releases, I got excited about that, because the digital kind of thing is really tough nowadays. I get why people do it. It's the same thing with comics. Like, you can have so many digital apps, and I will use those, but there's something different about having a physical copy sitting in front of you and reading the pages as they were originally intended to be. I always prefer a physical if I can get my hands on one.
Oh, absolutely, man. As I was telling you earlier, before we started the podcast, I still have, Fangoria magazines from, back in the 80s. And it's cool to just go back and read those sometimes, because you forget about, certain movies or things like that. I am a co-executive producer on a couple of movies from a Full Moon. Did some work with Charles Band. Actually, filmed one of the horror road shows that he was doing, where he'd travel around and just do like this little. It was like a one night horror convention type thing that would just go from city to city, and I love those movies like that. A lot of people, they really, crap on. Some of those, B movies, but I am a huge Puppet Master fan, and I know you are too, because we talked about it, are you happy that they're still pumping out, Puppet Master movies? Because, they keep throwing them out, and I enjoy them. What are your thoughts?
I am very happy with it. I'd like to see someone that commits the time and has a following, but then like you were saying, they still have those people that hate on. But I like to see someone continue on with their dream despite people trying to say, "Oh, it's not good, you shouldn't watch it." But I'm a huge fan of I'm also a huge fan of Killjoy.
Oh, Killjoy!
So great. I have like that combination DVD set of like all the Puppet Masters and Killjoy, like 1 through 3. Like all combined together, so sometimes I'll just get in that mode I love those campy kind of B-movie horrors a lot of time, and I love the humor effect to it.
Right. Have you watched any of Full Moon's like the Ginger Dead Men, excuse me, and I'll tell you another one that's good. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Doll Graveyard. It's from Full Moon, Charles Band, all that. If you get a chance to watch that, check it out. It's got Robin Sidney in it. and she's a great actress. It's just a great movie, and I love any kind of movie with, killer dolls or puppets or whatever you want to call it. I'm also a huge Critters fan. I know there was a new, Shudder had a Critters show on, and then I know they just released a new Critters movie. I saw it at Walmart earlier. I can't remember the name. It's Critters something. I should have done my research before this, but I want to go pick that up because I was a huge Critters fan. Just any of those movies like that will always have a special place in my heart because they're just fun. And Puppet Master was one of the first, I think it was the first, even before Chucky, in Child's Play. I think I saw Puppet Master first, and something about just killer dolls, it's hilarious, but at the same time, it's a little creepy, and
exactly,
I like that aspect of it. There's just, I think they're very underrated.
I agree. And that's actually one difference is, I like the Chucky movies. I do like those. But those don't creep me. Chucky doesn't creep me out. Those little freaking dolls from Puppet Master can be really freaky. Yeah, so those can actually still creep you out if you watch it. There's something about, I think it's difference between Chucky being like the kid's toy kind of doll and these being more of the porcelain figurines.
Right. And
those porcelain dolls always.
Yeah,
so they're more doll-like in what they do.
Absolutely, and Chucky talks, and he has some of the best one-liners ever. But the cool thing about Puppet Master, and even the old movie Dolls, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's kind of like Puppet Master, but it's a movie called Dolls, and it's awesome. It's from I think the early '80s, early to mid '80s, and I like the fact because it's almost like Michael Myers, because he doesn't talk except for that crazy move in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 where he screams die, but
right.
Normally Michael Myers is not supposed to talk, so I think that makes it cool too, is these puppets don't talk, they just do what they need to do, and some movies they are the antagonist, some movies they're the protagonist, some movies they're good, some movies they're bad as far as protecting people or just out on a killing spree, which I think that's great that you have that kind of random selection if you want to watch a Puppet Master movie where they're kind of the good guys, if you want to label it that way. But yeah, I love those movies. I was co-executive producer on the Ginger Dead Man Part 2, The Passion of the Crust, which is a hilarious movie. The first one had Gary Busey in it. It's
yes.
So if you get a chance to check those out, I was also executive producer, I believe, on Part 3. And
that's the one I did see the first one, but I think I saw the third one too. I can't remember the name of it, but I have that somewhere. I've never seen the second one. I've only seen the first one and the third one.
Oh yeah, man, you got to check out Part 2. It's hilarious. It's obviously a parody off of Mel Gibson's the Passion of the Christ. With the title The Passion of the Crust. It's hilarious. Right. But good times. But yeah, I'm a huge Phantasm fan. And I know you've watched some of the movies and stuff. I was, Angus Scrimm was one of the coolest actors, out there. He did great as the Tall Man. And that's one of the movies I hope that they never remake, because I hope they just leave Angus Scrimm's legacy alone.
Right.
What did you think about the original Phantasm?
I liked that's the one where he uses the telepathic, the little contraptions, right?
Yeah, I mean,
the balls that are the different.
Those are in every movie, but yeah, that's where you first see it. There's one scene in that movie that's in the mortuary that's just really awesome. But Angus Scrimm's another one of those horror villains that he doesn't say much. He's just creepy to look at, and
right.
The whole funeral home and mortuary and things like that creeped me out as a kid, and it still does to this day. If you ask me, what movie scared me the most as a kid and even to this day, I would tell you it was Phantasm 1. And I even love I love all of them. The last one was kind of kind of a bummer of a movie because, they had to rush it before Angus Scrimm passed away, and it's, it wasn't a great movie, but the first 4, like I said, 5, Ravager is the name of it, Phantasm Ravager. It's, it's good because it's a nice send-off for Angus Scrimm, but unfortunately it just is not really that great of a movie. What is one movie that scared you as a child that still to this day you watch it and you're just kind of like, I remember that freaking me out as a kid?
I can actually give you 2. Well, actually, the first one I haven't seen, but it was when I was a kid, the first movie, because like I said, I didn't see a lot of the horror movies until I was a teenager.
Right.
But when I was a kid, my dad showed me, I guess it was the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it wasn't even so much of the movie that freaked me out as my dad going around saying, I want to suck your blood, like all the time. Like he was a vampire. When I was a kid, I was absolutely terrified of that. And then as I grew older, he made me watch Halloween 2, which is what we were talking about earlier. And I remember watching that for the first time. And I remember immediately after the movie ended, him screaming, Michael Myers is right there, like pointing out a window. And I remember still to this day, I don't know if it was because the movie was fresh in my mind or what, or hallucination or something. But when he screamed that, I saw Michael Myers' face outside that window looking at me. And I remember just freaking out. And then when I became a teenager, okay, I'm sorry, you said 1, I just gave you 3.
No, give me as many as you want, brother. Go on, man.
Well, whenever I was a teenager, I slept in the basement because my little sister was born and my little brother was born, so my room got moved to the basement. But my mom bought me a copy of The Exorcist, the version you've never seen, which is the one that has all the extra added stuff into it. Yeah. I, like an idiot, being a teenager, turned off all the lights in the basement and watched the movie myself in its entirety. That was definitely, out of everything I've ever seen, that was definitely the most I've ever seen, and I still to this day have not watched it again. Like, I'm just like, nope, I've seen it once, I won't do it again. Yeah. Once has always been more than enough for me. Like, that scene where she's going down the stairs backwards, even thinking about it right now makes me not even want to talk about it anymore. Yeah, that freaking crap is just, I'm just like, nope, I'm not talking about it. I'm not watching it.
That movie, man, to this day, I mean, it's one of those movies that I don't care. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and when she's my age, if she watches The Exorcist, it's gonna work no matter what time period. That movie, it messed with a lot of people, when it came out. And you're right. I should add that to my list as well with Phantasm, because that movie, The Exorcist, is something. And if you're listening and you've never seen The Exorcist, I'm kind of like, Tony here. You're probably only going to watch it once, but at least watch it once. And
just don't do it alone.
Oh yeah, don't do it like Tony. Don't go in the basement. Watch it alone. Turn out the lights. I would not recommend that. Tony just vouched for that. Not a good idea. But
literally, just talking to you, I heard my wife walk upstairs, and it jump scared me. Just talking about it.
Man,
I just heard that creak upstairs, and I jumped, and I was like, oh my goodness, are you freaking kidding me? Just talking about the movie did that much. And I'm not the guy that gets scared easily, but that movie definitely burned into my memory.
They were not messing around with that movie. People were not ready for that movie. To this day, like I just mentioned, if you've never seen it, even in 2019, if a person's listening and they have not seen it, you're not ready for what you're going to see. But I highly recommend that you see it. I think any horror fan needs to watch The Exorcist. Another one that's great is The Omen. That's a great movie.
Yes.
And I remember I was in Worcester, Massachusetts at Rock and Shock at a horror convention they have up there. And I needed to use the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom, and I see these 2 guys standing there. They're obviously bodyguards, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing in this bathroom? And I look, and the little kid from the Omen remake, which was fairly new at that time, he was at the convention signing autographs and stuff, and he was in there using the bathroom, and I could not even go piss. until this kid got finished and the bodyguards got him out of there, you know. And I remember looking at that kid and I was like, fuck, he's scary to look at, you know. And this is from the remake, you know. And that kid nailed it. I mean, he had the look, and even in real life, just that brief encounter I had with him, and, you know, odd encounter in a restroom, you know, I felt weird. You know, I was like,
yep.
let me do what I got to do and get out of here. Like, this is weird, you know. But, you know, I have all kinds of fun stories about stuff like that I'll save for future episodes. I've talked to Tony, and we're going to try, you know, it's not going to be like a dead set time, you know, all the time. But, you know, every now and then when we have some free time, we're going to try to mix it up and have more episodes of, you know, Talk of Horror meets Everything But the Podcast, because, you know, Tony and I are a lot alike, and we have a lot of the same ideas and different ideas that we share with each other. And, you know, I think it's great. And we wanted to do this first episode just, you know, to have some fun, kind of let you guys know what we're about, and, you know, support each other, because, you know, as the horror community, I have to give a shout out, because a lot of people in the horror community, you think they would be, you know, mean or whatever, but it's one of the most loving communities that I've ever seen. And I love networking and meeting new people who share that passion. What are your thoughts on that, Tony?
I agree with that. I got to admit, like a couple seconds ago, you cut out a little bit, so I missed a little bit of it.
Oh, sorry, man.
But yeah, I don't know if it was on your end or my end sometimes.
Well, I could hear. You know, I think we're good on my end. So, you know, with the recording. So, but anyway, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I actually thought that my phone, like, literally just hung up, and I was like, oh no, and then I heard you talking again. I was like, phew, I'm safe.
Yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of, like, the actors, the actresses, everybody in the horror community are, like, super humble people, which makes them, like, willing to do stuff. It makes them willing to talk to fans and sign autographs, and, like, I love that interaction that they have with their fans. They're, like, super sweet people.
Yeah,
and it's cool to see that, because sometimes as a fan, you might be intimidated by somebody that played as this terrifying character that you saw, right. And then you find that person is like a teddy bear, basically. Like, they're way nicer which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. Oh man, you know, and I gotta give a shout out. Bill Moseley is one of the kindest people I've ever met. Actually, the first time I met him, I got a tattoo of Chop Top, you know, the character he played in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, and he was kind enough, you know, to come hang out with me and get some pictures right after I got that tattoo, and then I've met him on, you know, 4 or 5 different occasions since then, you know, at conventions and stuff, and I got to give a shout out. He is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And, but my biggest memory and, my fondest memory of anybody in the horror community, Betsy Palmer, the late great Betsy Palmer. I'll tell this quick story, and then, you know, I know we're on a time schedule and we got to go pretty soon, but, I want to share this story, and then I want to give you a chance to share a story as well. But, the first time I went to Rock and Shock in Worcester, Massachusetts in 2006, we were in there before it really started, and Betsy Palmer, if you don't know, she played Pamela Voorhees, Jason, you know, his mom in the original Friday the 13th, and she was over at her booth, and, you know, there was hardly anybody in there, and it was late on a Friday night, and she was bent over and didn't see me. And then all of a sudden she looked up, and I'm standing at her table, and it scared the shit out of her, and I felt so bad. And I remember I told her, I was like, I am so sorry, but if it makes you feel any better, you used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid, you know, Friday the 13th. And the next thing I know, she pulls out this plate with goldfish crackers and grapes on it. And she said, would you like some goldfish crackers and grapes? Well, you know, I didn't know, you know, should I say yes? Should I say no? Thankfully, I said yes, and I had a seat with her, and she shared her goldfish crackers and grapes with me, and we talked for a long time, and it was so funny. We took a picture, and she was hugging me, and she wanted to look at the picture, and when she looked at it, she saw that her hand was up, and that bothered her really bad, so she wanted to take another picture where her hand was on my back and not up. And I never will forget that. And, you know, she was such a sweet lady and she was so kind to me. And I remember she told me, you know, I have a nephew named Michael because, you know, my name's Michael. And that's just something that I'll never forget. And, you know, I've met so many people in the horror community, but that is the only picture that I have hanging in my studio because that meant so much to me. Is there anyone you've met or just a story, you know, in general from somebody, you know, in closing here, you know, that you've interacted with, whether it's been on Twitter or in person or at a convention or whatever? Is there a memory that stands out for you?
I'm glad you said Twitter because unfortunately I do not have an amazing story of being able to meet these people in person, which I hope sometime soon maybe I'll be able to get out and go to conventions and stuff like that because it's something I've always wanted to do and I've just never got around to it.
You'll do it.
But Twitter in and of itself is an amazing thing for you to be able to meet some of these people. Going back to what we were talking about with Fangoria, like I have that interview coming up with Natasha from Fangoria. She does the YouTube. She does a lot of things for Fangoria.
Right.
I think she's also a film director from what I've studied of her, but all that was literally just for me tweeting something about the Casualty Friday episode, which is the one that Felissa Rose, Kane Hodder, and Tiffany Shepis do.
Yes.
Their new podcast. I'm in love with that podcast.
It's freaking awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah, and what's cool about this story is the way this whole thing with this episode came about was literally me tweeting something about that and then them replying to it and then me just taking a chance and saying, you know, it'd be kind of cool to do an episode sometime all about Fangoria and the history of Fangoria. Does it sound like something you would ever be interested in? Not really expecting, you know, like maybe one day they'll see it, but not really expecting because people usually have thousands of fans. The odds of them seeing your specific tweet, you know, are usually slim to none. But actually getting a response in my messages from Natasha saying, hey, I would love to do this. Let's talk more about it. So that's kind of a cool story because it's like, I'm not exactly a huge person. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, I've interviewed people in like underground music and stuff like that, and I've done big interviews, but I haven't really branched myself out into the more of the movie entertainment aspect in a huge degree. So to have someone that's humbled and sweet enough to be willing to come on the show with me and discuss these things is really cool for me.
That's really I think that is so awesome, and you know, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, man, I'm so proud of you for doing that, and I can't wait, you know, for you to do that episode. I'll be listening to it the minute it drops. I'm really looking forward to it, and you know, that's one thing I want to tell people that Tony and I both agree on. If you have a dream, whether it's podcasting, you know, no matter what it is, you know, do not be afraid to reach out to people because like Tony just said, if he hadn't reached out to them, this wouldn't be happening for him. And not only for him, but it's cool for the people at Fangoria because to talk about their history and stuff like that, you know, a lot of people, they don't, you know, take that approach when they want to interview people. And I think that's something original. I think that's great that's what you're going to talk about. I'm sure you'll talk about a ton of other things as well. But man, you know, I'm really looking forward to that, dude. And, you know, the minute it drops, please let me know because, you know, I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, provided there's no major issues like rescheduling or anything, look for it to drop around Wednesday.
Awesome.
I've changed my new scheduling for anybody who's a fan of my show. I've changed my new scheduling, but originally planned on doing uploads every Monday. Okay. But I've decided to push it back a little bit for editing and for situations like this where I'm interviewing somebody on a Monday. I want to give myself a couple days of editing time.
Sure, man.
So look for new episodes. So from now on, my plan is new episodes every Wednesday. Whether I have a guest, whether it's just me, whether it's me hanging out with you on the phone or hanging out with a friend or whatever, it should be every Wednesday. Okay. That's the plan.
Awesome. Yeah, man, we're definitely going to do this again. I've had a blast. And, you know, remember guys that are listening, this is, you know, our first time, you know, doing this together. You know, we didn't go into this to try to be, you know, like super professional or anything. We just wanted to have fun and talk a little bit about, you know, horror. I know we could have gone in a lot more depth on things that we talked about, but, you know, we wanted to just kind of keep this short and give everybody a chance to, you know, to know that we're here. Give us a listen, you know, if you want to follow us, Tony is Tonysaurus Rex. I believe it's REKS. Am I correct?
Yes, okay. It is REKS on Twitter, or if you do Instagram, it's real Tonysaurus Rex, but that is spelled with an X. So, Twitter would not allow me to do the X because someone else had already taken it.
Well, I think it's cooler that you've got a different, spelling of the word Rex, because, that's unique to you. So I think that's cool. So, you guys give Tony a listen. Like I said, go follow him on Twitter. Check out his Instagram. Listen to his podcast. This dude busts his ass, and I'm proud of him, and I'm really honored and happy to have him, as a guest tonight. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at _Mike Woodard. On Twitter, I also run a YouTube page, which is where I put all my podcasts, but I was talking to Tony, and I'm going to try to get them on some, like maybe Spotify or something, in the future. But right now, they're on the Twitter, or on YouTube. The YouTube is The Morgue, All Things Horror. That's my YouTube page. So go check it out. That's where this interview will drop, and then Tony will be dropping it on, his Everything But the Podcast as well. So, check it out. And we appreciate any support that we get from you guys. We love you guys. And, the horror community, as I said, is just an amazing group of people. And it gives me the opportunity to meet new people like Tony and vice versa. And, we appreciate all the support. So, Tony, is there anything else you want to add, man, before we go?
I do want to touch a little bit on what you were saying. Like, I want to tell any of the listeners, either to Talk of Horror or to Everything But the Podcast, to always chase your dreams. Don't let anybody tell you that it can't be done. I've been there. I did Masters of the Underground, and then I had a complete 2-year hiatus of me thinking that I just couldn't do podcasting. It wasn't for me. Now I've decided I want to come back, and look what's happening. Like, always take the shot. Don't be afraid to ask. A lot of these people that you may think would never want to come on your podcast will actually be excited at the fact that you were honest enough to come to them, or you wanted to take that chance. A lot of them appreciate that, because not a lot of people are willing to do that. They get scared or nervous, and they think that nobody wants to take that time of day. Just always take the shot and don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man, because at the end of the day, you got to remember, these actors, actresses, directors, whatever, they're people just like you and I. And like Tony just said, a lot of them, whether you believe it or not, they're flattered and honored and more than willing to come on your show, or, whatever it is. The horror community is just the best. And so with that being said, Tony, thank you again for taking the time. I know you're an hour ahead of me, and it's already late, and I know you've got to work tomorrow. And just the fact that you took the time to come on and, talk about horror, I appreciate it, buddy. And, you've got my support, and we're definitely going to do this again. We'll work out a time, and we're going to have more Talk of Horror, Everything But the Podcast crossover episodes. And I promise in the next episode that we do, it may be a little while, but, maybe soon, who knows. But I promise the next one we do, we will have a specific subject, stay on that subject. But tonight, we just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves to you guys. And so, yeah, I appreciate it, Tony, and I hope you have a good night, brother. And to everyone that's listening, thank you so much, and we will catch you next time on the Talk of Horror or Everything But the Podcast. Thanks for joining us.